Happy Friday, everyone. Good to see everyone. It's going to be probably a quieter day today as Metals Investor Forum in Toronto. People are either traveling or they're at the show already. A very active next week, not work week, but from today onward till I believe it's March 5th. You've got where you roll into PDAC as well. So lots happening in the mining space. Most people will be in person, chatting with companies they like, chatting with CEOs and their IR professionals. I'd urge you, if you're in Toronto or around that area, pop down to PDAC. It's pretty wild. It's huge. It gets up to like 30,000 people, like visitors through. And it is quite a show. Almost every junior and major is going to be there. Great shows. Metals Investor Forum too. Also wonderful show. You get a real chance to speak with a lot of different companies, and that's not easy to do in most markets and in most companies, to be able to get direct access to people. And it's a real blessing in this space. Big news that we're going to follow today is kind of these critical metals deals that are like currently underway or going to be solidified today with Ukraine. That's happening, I believe, in a couple hours. We're going to go through what it could look like. What are some of the talking points right now? Of course, in Congo as well, because they've thrown in their hat for support from the U.S. And then we'll touch on what does that mean for Canada? Because if you say you don't need to be a trading partner with the U.S. And they can go get their supply chain filled in the Congo and in Ukraine, that's a huge problem. Doesn't hurt mining. It just means money is going to flow there rather than to Canada. And we'll touch on a couple of articles, two opinion polls, one regarding business owners and their view of U.S. right now. And then, of course, we'll do one from Yale, whether what your take on is Yale or not, on the actual impact of reciprocal tariffs. From their study, basically fairly negligible. So that might be an eye-opener for people that, if you're getting all your news from CBC and all your opinion from CBC, which is state-sponsored media, then I already know what you believe in regard to every talking point out there. If you maybe look at 3 or 4 different sources and put a little bit more effort into viewing things, you might be exceptionally surprised by how quickly the narrative changes, especially if you're just watching clips of things. Like if you're just watching one clip of Elon saying something, or Nancy Pelosi saying something, or Biden saying something, or Trump saying something, you would think that they're utterly insane. And sometimes they are. I mean, we all know that. But then you could watch another one, you think, oh, wow, absolute genius. I really agree with what they're saying. And this is the problem with information and with and I won't even call it data, because it's not. It's propaganda at this point on both sides, on all sides. And why critical reasoning and a critical approach to everything is absolutely vital. You can portray the exact same news story factually if you edit the video a certain way and only highlight certain talking points in it and come across with very widely different views. And that's a disturbing issue that we have to face. And whenever you're dealing with elections and there's so much at stake, you better believe that's happening on a massive level. So let's jump into, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We have to acknowledge that gold has gotten hit pretty hard there. It's cusping that $3,000 range and it's pulled back. Lots of reasons as to why. Maybe people just taking profits. Our look on gold is still exceptional. We don't see anything changing in the narrative. And you see price movements like this. You look at any chart, it goes up and down. Like, I mean, there's volatility, some massive volatility. Like if you look at the likes of a Tesla or some of these tech stocks, their volatility can be really big. And that's great if you're a trader. You want volatility. You want to be able to trade in and out of something. But if you look at a chart, like if you stretch it out and you look at, say, gold, in a year, or gold over 3 years or 5 years, you just see this climbing very nicely. And that's what we have to remind ourselves when we see extreme events in price change. Unless there's some significant major issue that's caused it, then there's a million reasons why it could have happened. Someone could have sold a position. Someone could be doing this, that, and everything else. A big fund may have said, hey, we don't think gold's going to hit 3,000. We said, see you later at 2,900. We'll take our money and run. There's a million reasons why things can trade the way they do. But on that, we have Goliath, which is a strong conviction company that we love. Absolutely got pummeled the last 2 days. And we have a response to that for all our members. That'll be coming out on the weekend. The stock has solidified and bounced back again. It pulled back quite a bit. So to not acknowledge that would be kind of silly. I've got very firm convictions as to why that is. And also that, it's very telling of the market right now. And I've read lots of bizarre and like literally insane comments in different forums. And that's why I remind people, yes, the stock was going to pull back regardless. If it had amazing news and they posted all of their results, the last of their holes, it was going to pull back anyway. It may have gotten a run up first, but because people know, well, they're going to go into their drilling season, it's going to be a while before we see assays again. So we're going to have a very big detail on that for our members on the weekend, and we'll break it down as much as we can. We'll look at some other analysts that can actually put price points. And full disclosure, we don't work with Goliath. We've covered them for 5 years. We've loved the story. We own the stock. I'm not paid by them. I don't promote them. There's nothing of that nature. I'd like to. I'll be also very open about that too, but we don't. We haven't had a contract with them. So clear that out of the way as well. But we are big fans of what they're doing, the mineralization and whatnot. And we're going to work through what they have. And also, you don't have to take my word for it. I certainly wouldn't take almost anyone on any of these forums' word for it, which people seem to do, which always amazes me. But you'll see later on today, I should be careful because they are traveling. Crescat usually puts out their information on Fridays about the companies they follow. I'm sure they'll have a comment or a video, but it is this crazy week of myth and PDAC. So don't hold me to it, but it could be this weekend. Otherwise, we're going to get something from them very soon, I'm sure. But anyways, check us out the weekend though. We're going to have lots to talk about, and we'd love to get your feedback too. But let's jump into what's happening today, and it's a big deal. And once again, we're going to remove the political part of these deals away from it. I know that is hard to do today. Almost everything is politically focused. But let's just look at the Ukraine deal. Zelensky is in town. He's meeting with Trump today. And so far, it looks like what we understand is that there's going to be a reconstruction investment fund jointly controlled by both Ukraine and the U.S. It doesn't specify the monetary sum for the U.S., but it would be some sort of profit sharing and repayment timeline, which is also undefined. But it's going to include that Ukraine will allocate 50% of its future revenues from national assets. That's all. So that's all of the, say, nitrogen, and which is critical for all of your, for farming and, fertilizer. Sorry. Any minerals, oil and natural gas, any critical battery metals, any of that. Once again, Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. So that's, depending on your perspective, exceptionally onerous. And once again, that leads into all the political discussion, which we're going to avoid and leave it. We're just going to look at it from the point of view of a business deal in regards to the U.S. In the U.S. favor, absolutely incredible. This is huge for the U.S. And then we'll tie into Congo here in a minute, because this means double trouble for Canada. Because if they are able to get access to these, have it mined, have it processed even possibly, and then shipped back to the U.S., that could deal with some of the critical metals issue that the U.S. Is dealing with. And once again, regardless of one's viewpoint on drill baby drill narrative or climate change narrative, Donald Trump was the one who made the critical metals list. So he wants these metals. There's going to be a further push, and we're seeing that for metals. And that's great if you're in the sector. And once again, it may not be great for Canada, depending on how Canada responds, if they want to be a trading partner with them or they don't. The strategic implications are very huge right now. And, right now, I mean, you look at lithium and rare earths, Ukraine's got it. And of course, then nothing's easy, but that conversation obviously is exceptionally difficult because people have very strong political opinions on that matter. And that's not for us to discuss. But just as far as just business wise, and if you were looking at that, the US will have done exceptionally well from basically a lot of the aid, that 175 billion. Much of it went to US contractor, like for defense industry, to supply the weapons. So they got paid. Then the US, no matter what, the U.S. was going to reconstruct Ukraine as well. That was going to be, I imagine, I don't want to be too conspiratorial or negative, they were going to be involved in the rebuilding of it. So that was going to be a huge upside for them, as was, if you look back at World War II, that was the big upside for U.S. They were going to get to rebuild all of Europe and be able to put the bonds out to rebuild that. That immediately leapfrogs you to being the world leader and dominant position for financial, for control, whatever way you want to put it. If we jump into more critical metals, when we look at diversifying supply chains, this also puts into pressure China and its stranglehold on other places, particularly the Congo. Right now, the Congo is number 2 behind Chile for production of copper. It's well known for cobalt, and it's also well known because terrible mining practices. It's also well known for a lot of negative things. And what does this mean? Once again, let's remove the politics, because I know Rwanda is very adamant that there aren't rebels stealing and mining their resources with artisanal or illegal mines. Leave that all out. I mean, it's a political juggernaut to deal with as well, of which I'm certainly no foreign policy expert on Rwanda and Congo. So my opinion on those matters are completely irrelevant. But once again, if you looked at it simply from a deal from the US perspective, and also if you're a Canadian investor and you say, wait a second, if they do a deal with Congo, and this is all hypothetical, there's nothing in stone or anything, this is merely a proposition. I would imagine that would mean the US would go in with an army base. There would be this idea of, yes, you have lots of critical metals. We'll work a 50-50 deal out with you, kind of like we've done with Ukraine. We're here to support you. And that would mean that it wouldn't be, hey, we're Barrack in Mali and being kind of held over a barrel by a military regime. It would be, you have a U.S. base now to support you and protect the assets. Now, once again, that's a political landmine, especially if you're a leftist, to hear that type of talk, because it sounds a lot like U.S. imperialism again, or colonialism, whatever term an extreme leftist wants to use. But that's exactly what China's been doing. And the reason why the Congo is very open and offering this idea is because they've had to deal with China. And you don't have to go down too far, not even a rabbit hole. Just go to your large language model and put in how relations in Africa and China have been, and you'll realize why a lot of African nations are open and looking to the West and saying, listen, maybe we can be a little bit friendlier. Maybe we can work with you again, because this is not what we thought it was going to be. And that is that discussion we've had for years about if the West wants to even imagine attempting doing any energy transition, it would mean changing logistics and critical supply chains. We've been saying it for a very long time. Now we've got an administration who's actually doing it. And yes, is it going to be uncomfortable? Will people like it? No. Every person on one side of the aisle is going to complain about every single movement that's made, even when it's against their own ideology. And that's what's so remarkable and funny, is that everyone that supports climate change initiatives and ideology, who will be against any of these ideas of securing minerals and metals, and who are actively opposing, you see them in the news. We're going to read an article here in a minute about how mining is against the climate agenda. And you're left shaking your head going, wait, who is these people? What's their level of education on any of these matters? And whether it's just politics and misrepresenting things because it doesn't suit the framework or the narrative. We had seen that this needed to be done. We saw a good step and I like to give credit where credit's due with Biden with an infrastructure plan. I've always said I wish it was a lot more infrastructure and a whole lot less social ideologies, but at least he put it in place. And the U.S. needs an infrastructure, just roads and bridges, not even nuclear and everything else more advanced. So that was a great start. That identification that we need to bring business back. We need chips. We need to be manufacturing them. Battery plants, we need to be doing that as well. We need to be doing all of these things. If we just leave it for someone else to go build and do, and we let them control the entire supply chain of future energy, which is metals, then you're going to in for trouble. So this is all part of the shakeup. But we see an administration now that is redefining that, listen, do you want to be a trading partner with us or not? And in large part, that's going to be tied in, and we're not going to touch it as well, but with politics. They're not, I get the very distinct perspective if I watch any of the discussions that delegates who have been sent to Europe, who have talked about the authoritarian and anti-free speech regimes that are in Europe. They've been very adamant that you're going to be a partner with us because you believe in Western ideals, or do you believe in the far left, kind of Marxist ideology that we know. If you aren't aware, I would urge you to go learn how destructive that has been. And once again, I studied international politics in university. I was brought up with all the Marxist doctrine, none of the other side other than, bad. And it wasn't until after that you think, wait, why aren't we being taught any of these other things? I should probably find out. In any event, interesting developments, and we're going to see other countries come to the table. Some other African nations, of course. India has kind of poked their head out as well, saying, maybe we should consider more deal making. They have an initiative on critical and emerging technologies. Indonesia has also opened up and proposed some limited free talk discussions and agreements with the U.S. Because right now they're really in bed with China. And it makes sense. I don't mean in bed, as far as ideology or beliefs or anything, but they're right next door. I mean, for them to ship nickel and whatnot, it's easy. It's right there. It's an obvious trading partner, just like Australia would be. I mean, it's very simple and an obvious trading partner. But once again, if the U.S. says, oh, yeah, we're happy to have maybe more of a strong hold in Indonesia as well, and India, certainly India, that would be great. There's a lot there to be had. Now, there's a great article, and I'm going to kind of go a little bit faster here too, because got a lot going on this morning. There was Philip Cross wrote an excellent article in the Financial Post. I would encourage people to go take a look. He gives some details as to this 2024 being record volume of production for Canada. The total real growth since 2009 is 88%. And he's just seeing that has been almost against a narrative or any support from a federal perspective. Like that's all done organically, which that's very telling. Can you imagine if you had, and it's his perspective, and I would share it, if you had a government that was actually pro industry and mining so that we could become a leader in natural resources. It's an interesting article, and I'll let you get into it, but it really highlighted that gold had a significant pickup in investment, potash, like an incredible amount. We're well known. Nutrien is a massive company, and nickel. So he points out some great, successes in that. So an interesting opinion. Now, on the flip side, there's one as well, and this is one where I just shake my head, and I'm not. And it's from the National Post. I'm not going to mention the author, but the title. David Eby's green goals at odds with his plan to fast track BC mines. No, that's literally misinformation. Mining is the solution for climate change. And if you don't know that by now, and you're a journalist, you shouldn't be writing. Now, is it at odds with leftist doctrine and ideology? 100%. It certainly is, because he points out that, well, there could be special interest groups that are concerned, environmental groups, NGOs, and of course, First Nations issues. That's a political ideology. as well as environmentalism. But if you're talking strictly about green agenda, mining is the solution. And if he's not aware of that, I don't know, even though it's an opinion, you probably shouldn't be writing too much about it because it's literally factually incorrect. And at this point in this stage of the game, people need to know that. And also need to call out people like that and say, no, that is the green agenda, mining. We need these things in order to do any of the goals to meet. Also, I'll finish with this because it's an interesting perspective. There was an article saying a poll of Canadian businesses have shifted dramatically. It's like 50% view their U.S. relations as being very strained and it's going to be troubling. And you read all these kind of posts about, oh, things have gotten expensive because of tariffs from the U.S. And I laugh because there aren't any right now. This has just been a threat. But once again, it highlights the misinformation that's out there. The reason why everything's expensive is because they've printed all this money and our economy has run like terribly for about 8 years. And things have been expensive for quite some time. There hasn't been tariffs yet. If they get imposed, there could be a giant, enormous shock to our system. That being said, this kind of ties into what I mentioned originally. In January of 2025, the Budget Lab at Yale conducted a study looking at the reciprocal tariff idea from the U.S. and revolved 20 different countries, but they wanted to look at Canada in particular. And they estimate that implementing a reciprocal tariff policy would result in an average tariff rate increase of 4.59% on Canadian imports to the U.S. That was the smallest amongst the 20 countries analyzed. So that puts things. Now, once again, you can challenge the study. I encourage you to go look at it. But this relatively modest increase in tariffs on Canadian goods suggests that it's a low grade barrier. That maybe this is all politics and propaganda at this point, rather than actual economic impact. Because once again, there is no economic impact right now because there aren't tariffs. So anything that you read in which people are saying, I've been hurt by this, they haven't yet. You're hurt because you're anticipating something, or you think something, or you've been told something, but something to look at. And I wouldn't necessarily, put, all of my, eggs into a Yale study, but it is a study out there. And I like to point out things that, and certainly Yale certainly wouldn't be any kind of right-wing think tank by any stretch of the imagination. It's a progressive university. So, it's interesting for them to come out with the perspective that this isn't impactful. And just to wrap things up, Reuters had a great piece as well, highlighting, where does the U.S. get its copper from? Now, there's a great chance Arizona is going to be a major point if everything moves as according to plan. But right now, it's Chile. A lot comes from Canada. But Congo, Peru's up there, but Congo is a major, major producer. And this is why I wanted to highlight. I have a very specific opinion on what's happening as far as these tariffs, because it's the same message that was delivered to Europe. And if the countries decide to go further left and extreme in their authoritarian ideology and their restrictions on freedoms, I think they're going to run into problems. And the U.S. voted decisively. It wasn't close. They voted decisively that they didn't want to go down that road. And most of Europe is also voting, and they've spoken that they decisively have had enough. It's time for people in Canada to also reevaluate what do they want as their big key framework for the future going forward. And I don't mean reading a CBC article, because that's not news. I'll say, listen, yeah, it's an opinion. It's a state-funded opinion. They got $600 million from the Canadian government. And by the way, if the Liberals win, they'll get $1 billion next time around. That's what they're asking for. That's what they're demanding. We deserve $1 billion of taxpayer money. That should also raise alarm bells from anyone who's looking at what they're reading. And I urge people, once again, you don't have to believe me. I mean, we try to provide the sources for people to look at. But once again, if you're using one source, or all of your sources are the same source, which would be, you listen to The View, or you listen to the Daily Show, and you also like CNBC, you're getting one monotone view. Just the same as if you said, I listened to Fox and the Daily Wire, that's one specific view. You need to read 4 or 5 on one specific point. And maybe you should throw in some international on there too as well, perspective. Even if you're told you shouldn't, like maybe you should read Al Jazeera and their perspective on what's happening in Canada and the US and think, holy smokes, wow, their perspective is totally different. That's when you get a more actual informed balance on something. And in between all of these opinions from media, including myself, the truth therein lies. And this is the problem with everything, whether it's mining, whether it's looking at a forum in a junior market where someone is saying the most outlandish, ridiculous things, because you don't know their vested interest that they might be selling the stock short. You don't know what the vested interest is of someone. Sometimes they're very adamant and very open about what their vested interest is, but often they're not. Once again, in my space, who are you paid by? People often say, well, Andrew, if you're paid by XYZ promoter, you're just promoting something. And I'm very, very clear that, yes, I'm promoting mining. I want it to be Canada. That's my big goal. And I want it to be with great teams that fit our model. And does it mean they're going to hit every single time? No, that's completely insane to even imagine that that's true. But we had a lot of success. And we will moving forward because we've applied a bunch of disciplined strategies. And those have to be looked at and taken a step back, with our own bias all the time. So 30 minutes, a lot of opinions, a lot of ideas out there, a lot to think about over the weekend. And I always urge people that whether it's mining, it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of research, to find those 10 companies that you really like. The stock market might be an indicator of something, but sometimes it's not. Like we saw a huge run up with Goliath and a huge drop down. Does that mean the story's over? Of course it doesn't. So there's lots of learning points, and we like to use the stock market just like I would use sports to determine, am I improving? Is my thesis correct? Can I see results? Can I judge myself day to day in this framework that is it correct? And that's all part and parcel of growth, that we apply, whether it's to my health and working out or to, political or social opinions and whatnot, willing to challenge them, or whether it means projects specifically where you're challenged to go, ooh, that wasn't a good drill hole, or that was fantastic. What does that mean? We have to be open to the criticism, and we have to be open to be critical in our reasoning as well. Anyways, enough about all of this. I hope you have a great weekend. It's going to be a great time at PDAC and at Metals Investor Forum. Lots of news to come out, and make sure you check out the weekend. We're going to have a lot of numbers, a lot of ideas, and a lot of opinions here, specifically on Goliath. And everyone, have a great weekend.